I got back last night from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was attending the National Association of Counties conference. And these conferences are always a useful and interesting source of good ideas, but the most exciting thing for me was to ride the Lynx light rail that the city of Charlotte implemented for the public in 2007. It very much resembles our proposed Purple Line, and it is a hit. It's enormously popular. The ridership substantially exceeds projections. My staff, Chris Gillis, who arranged our tour and briefing with the Charlotte Transit Agency, will be writing up an article that I think he'll submit as a blog post about everything we learned down there. But I feel as though I've seen the future, and it's popular. The Blue Line serves communities that have been substantially revitalized. There's a smart growth redevelopment going on at every station along the route. There are restaurants and bars that attract millennials. You can go to these breweries and bars and imbibe safely, knowing you don't have to drive home. And also there's a hiker-biker trail that is very attractive, nicely designed, that runs alongside the Blue Line in Charlotte. It very much resembles, as I said earlier, our Purple Line, and I'm very excited, having now seen this and ridden on it, that the decision that we're making to proceed with the Purple Line is absolutely the right decision, and that it will significantly assist communities all along the route, will increase land values, will be appealing and popular. And I'm disappointed that that the groundbreaking now appears to be being delayed into 2016. It's very clear to me from Charlotte's experience that any delay in construction just adds cost. That if our effort here is to bring in a great project at the lowest possible cost, we can't delay. There's cost inflation every month, and any further delays will only add to the cost, and that would be very unwise. So now that we are proceeding with the Purple Line, we need to proceed as rapidly as possible, and the payoff will be enormous, as it was for the city of Charlotte. The city of Charlotte's now preparing to build a second leg of its Blue Line to connect all the way up to UNC Charlotte. And what the transit agency told us was that in those communities where there was some concern and reticence and skepticism prior to the construction of the line, now the very same folks who were skeptical are saying, please complete the extension, because this is great. We want to be able to take this all the way to the university as soon as possible. Now, the major business before the council this week, of course, is the savings plan proposals that County Executive Leggett sent us. I am committed, and my colleagues are committed, to producing a savings plan here. We made our major decisions on our fiscal 16 budget on May 14th, and then on May 18th, the 5-4 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in the Wynn case was adverse to Montgomery County, and that is combined with shortfalls in our estimated income tax revenues that came in both late May and again in June. And so we're looking at a potential revenue reduction below projections of $150 million or more in fiscal 2017. Fiscal 2016, the budget year that we're now in, is not our problem. Our approved reserves are higher than ever. We have an historically high reserve of $383 million, 8.2% of adjusted government revenues. That's $12 million more than our fiscal plan called for fiscal 16 when we adopted the fiscal plan in 2011. So we are a well-resourced county, and the bottom has not fallen out. We're going to be all right, but we do need to make reductions to the base to enable the decisions that we make next spring to be handled in a responsible and a constructive way. So we're going to review the proposals that Mr. Leggett sent us. We will agree with many of them. We will not agree with several of them. And I'm disappointed in proposals like the elimination of $500,000 in housing vouchers for our homeless veterans. This is the year that Montgomery County has designated as the Year of the Veteran. We've subscribed to a national effort called Zero 2016, whose goal is the elimination of homelessness among veterans in 2015. And the elimination of chronic homelessness in 2016. Under those circumstances, I truly don't feel that eliminating housing vouchers for homeless veterans is consistent with our community's values, and I very much hope that the County Council will reject that idea and other suggestions that are adverse to our most needy constituents. We can manage in a fiscally responsible way without harming those who most rely on us to look after them. I know my colleagues agree with me on this, and I know that we will adopt a responsible savings plan that maintains sound financial management for our taxpayers now and in the future. So I'll take any questions that any of you have.
In terms of transportation, things like the Bethesda circulator, et cetera, is that something you guys can live with, or the council can live with, or no?
We are going to agree with some of Mr. Leggett's proposals. We are not going to agree with all of them, and committees will get to work and will review what are the reductions that we think we can handle. And I don't wish to prejudge what committees will do, especially committees that I don't sit on.
George, when it comes to the fire department and police department, what is Mike Leggett proposing to cut in those two departments specifically?
Well, you have the elements of the savings plan there that we've distributed. There are the reductions in the police department are relatively light. The body camera rollout will take some time anyway because the issues relating to privacy are still unresolved. So the police department, I don't think, takes a very heavy hit. What I think we need in the fire department is a real look at whether we're actually saving money. You can make some short-term reductions that lead to greater long-term costs in terms of overtime and one fire station needing to work harder to cover shorter response times from other fire stations. But the Public Safety Committee will take a close look at all of those issues. The other thing that we need to take a long-term look at is the right sizing of government, especially when it comes to compensation at the most senior levels. By the time we get to the fiscal 17 budget, I hope that we will have in place a new approach towards top-level compensation. And I'm asking our Office of Legislative Oversight to add to its work plan a study of whether compensation for senior managers in county government is out of step with compensation in jurisdictions nearby and comparable jurisdictions around the United States. We do need to have a real conversation over the long term about right sizing. I think we're compensating people very, very generously, and I'm talking about hundreds of senior and managerial positions. That's real money.
And to piggyback on that, here in a reading from your memo, the resources should go to people most in need, not to excessive salaries for our highest paid personnel. Would you characterize the salaries at top levels as excessive?
I'm asking our Office of Legislative Oversight to analyze whether we are a significant outlier in the levels of compensation that we pay. I know that we have hired some department directors recently who would be very happy to fill those positions at a salary 7 to 10% lower than the salaries that we offered. And I've been in touch with some of those managers. So I think we've been very, very generous in the hiring decisions that we've made at the most senior levels. And I think in the long run, the taxpayers can still count on excellent service with a more sustainable rate of compensation at the top end.
Would that study, that OLO study that you ordered, would that also look at overtime pay of these high-level officials, especially in public safety departments?
You know, that's a separate issue, and OLO has looked into overtime quite a bit. There's no question, especially with police and fire, that overtime is something we need to monitor very closely, but it's my understanding that the police department in particular is doing a much better job of managing overtime. That's an ongoing subject of review, but that would not be the specific focus of this OLO study.
Okay. And also, other than the housing voucher cuts that you mentioned, are there anything specifically that Leggett has proposed that you would contest?
I was very surprised by his decision to eliminate the bump in payment for providers for the developmentally disabled. I don't understand how you can look at the difficulty of the jobs that these attendants have assisting clients on the autism spectrum, clients who are profoundly disabled. Some of these clients sometimes are violent. Sometimes they bite and hit their attendants. And we're asking folks to work for just pennies above what any of us would consider a livable wage, and to reduce our support for those workers, I think, is not the kind of decision our community wants us to make.
Do you feel there's a sense of hypocrisy in the naming this the Year of the Veteran and then doing all but with the proposal sitting before the council right now?
Well, I've addressed that. I'm asking my colleagues not to go along with that reduction. I'm very confident that we will achieve long-term savings. The cost of having clients on the street is significant. The status quo is expensive. When individuals who live on the street end up incarcerated, when they end up in emergency rooms for health care, when they end up burdening our public facilities like libraries and ride-on bus, it costs us more than it would cost us to house them. That's been proven over and over again in communities across the United States. And so this is a short-term reduction that leads to long-term costs, and I'm asking my colleagues not to go along with that.
Is some of that developmental disability cuts, is that being taken on by the state under a new program? Are you familiar with that?
The state is primarily responsible for reimbursement to the nonprofit service providers. The supplement has historically been dollars that Montgomery County has added over and above the state reimbursement, recognizing that our cost of living is substantially higher than, for example, St. Mary's County, which is in the same region under the state rate.
And just so I'm reading this correctly, in the council column of reconciliation items, that's what you wanted maintained? Or
I'm not speaking at this moment to direct committees what cuts they will or won't
No, I
suggest.
understand. I'm
but
just making sure that
the
I'm clear
council
on this.
added to Ike Leggett's fiscal 16 budget proposal, and Mr. Leggett has eliminated nearly half in his proposals of items that were very important to council members.
And that's why I'm asking, because I see, for example, in the transportation arena, you've asked for sidewalk repair, public safety education on pedestrian issues, sidewalk inventory, sidewalk digital map, and it
These
looks
were
like
all-
he's cutting them all.
These were all items that were priorities for, and I believe that we can get through fiscal 16. We're in a very sound position. We will agree to some of his recommendations, and our staff is proposing additional cost reductions beyond what the executive suggests. But in the long run, I think we've got to have a real hard conversation about right sizing. I don't see how we can justify very, very substantial compensation increases for managers making $200,000 or more, and then suggest that we won't assist attendants for the developmentally disabled to stay above the minimum wage. That doesn't strike me as the kind of decision our constituents would support.
What's the timeline for the council now?
We will pass a savings plan on our last day before going out for our August recess. On July 28th, we'll adopt a savings plan at the full council. Committees are working between now and then. Each committee has a meeting scheduled this week, and if additional meetings are necessary next week, to review and revise the proposals as we come up with our own savings plan.
I can't imagine this is unique to Montgomery County.
The wind decision affects every county.
And so every county across the state is probably coming to the similar,
Well, every county in the United States is affected by the wind decision. I don't know how many were not providing refunds for state taxes, but certainly every county in Maryland, we've got cost estimates of the impact of the wind decision. I'm not in a position to tell you whether other county legislative bodies are considering savings plans at this time. I don't know the answer to that. I'd be interested in your guys reporting on that.
And as you go through this process, you want to hear from the public?
We are hearing from the public, and we've established a special portal at montgomerycountymd.gov/council to make it easy for folks to submit their thoughts on the savings plan. We're getting abundant emails daily, hundreds of emails from folks who are expressing deep concern over some of the decisions that were made in the executive's proposals.
Could
Be able to
this,
share what some of those, what the bigger concerns are?
Sure, we're hearing from the community that agrees with me that we ought to make it a priority to house our homeless veterans. We're getting hundreds of emails on that. We're getting hundreds of emails on the issue of the supplement for attendants who assist developmentally disabled clients. We're hearing from a lot of folks in Tacoma Park about the closure of the Piney Branch Elementary School swimming pool. Those, I think, are the three biggest topics right at this moment.
Could the savings plan come in lower than $50 million? Could it come in higher? This past by the council?
It could come in lower, it could come in higher.
Do you know how significantly lower? Like, will it be over 20 million, do you think? Will it be around 50 million?
I'm going to be conferring with my colleagues, and we have a very autonomous committee system. I'm not dictating at this point to committees a number that I want to see, because I think substantively the proposals are very consequential. I don't think we can just, in a haphazard way, without a lot of thought, make some of these decisions. So the committees will review them with care, and I don't have a target number in mind right here today.
Getting back to what you said about the light rail in North Carolina and what you're hoping for the Purple Line, have you had a chance to take a hard look at Governor Hogan's plan to, I think the term that Jim Dinegar used to like to use was skinny it down?
Yes.
Are you concerned that you're going to end up with less than a Chevy? They like to say you were asking for a Cadillac, they want to put you in a Chevy.
Right.
But
So-
to get people out of their cars, you need a great system, it would seem to me. Are you concerned about those cuts?
We're going to get a great system. We're going to provide commuters with a choice, and as in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was this weekend, I'm confident that lots of people will choose the light rail over their cars. One of the interesting examples that we learned from the Charlotte system was that they went through a cost reduction mechanism as they were in negotiation with the federal government, and they designed the length of the platforms. Initially, the length of the platform was long enough to accommodate 3-car trains, and then they scaled it back to have a shorter platform, thinking, well, the 2-car trains should be sufficient. The system is so popular, ridership has substantially exceeded projections, and now at much greater cost, they're having to go back and rebuild those stations to have longer platforms to accommodate 3-car trains. So we need to be very smart about our spending and not adopt short-term cost reductions that generate much larger long-term costs. I think we need to look at the reductions that the state is proposing in that light. In addition, when you ask private partners to pony up more on the front end, it does commit the state to pay back more over the long term, and we need to be very conscious. Congressman Delaney has been pressing this point, that the state's cost of borrowing, the interest rate that the state has access to, are very favorable, and that we should not be shifting costs that the state will have to pay back at a higher cost of borrowing. So I think we need to take the long-term view. Once we build this system, we're going to be using it for many, many decades. It's going to be in place long into the future, and the decisions that we make now commit us for many, many years to come. So short-term cost savings at the expense of much greater long-term costs are not smart.
I know you mentioned closing a pool at an elementary school, but could I get you to talk a little bit more about the proposed cuts in the education arena?
Well, that's up to the school board.
I see on here it's talking, I guess, specifically about Montgomery College.
Yes.
Yes. Well, the Education Committee is meeting this morning. I haven't yet heard, I don't know if they're done. I haven't heard if they've concluded their recommendations. Montgomery College is enormously important to training our workforce, and it's lifelong learning. My family got the benefit of Montgomery College way beyond our early 20s. So it's important to all of our residents, and especially for low-income residents. If we're going to impose a big tuition increase, that's going to be prohibitive for the very folks who we want to get a good education and participate in the workforce. But I'm not going to try to prejudge the Education Committee's decisions there.
Which of Hogan's preliminary proposed cuts for the Purple Line do you think will affect the county the most?
At this stage, I think what's important is that we acknowledge that there's a strong commitment to build the system from the governor, and that our Department of Transportation is going to work very constructively with the State Department of Transportation and with Prince George's County, and we're going to approach that in a very positive and collaborative way. And I don't think that we should either say that we're going along with everything because it's a negotiation, nor should we say that we're drawing a line in the sand and that any of these items are a deal breaker. I think it's wise to try to save money, I think some of the recommendations, like on the nature of the building materials, are probably just fine. There will be issues that require, further discussion, and I think we're having a good dialogue now with the Maryland Department of Transportation, and I think it's a negotiation now.
Do you feel like you have a seat at that negotiation table, or do you feel like the
Personally?
state is unilaterally deciding these things?
It's too early to say.
What about the extension or increasing the amount of time between trains? It's only, I think, a minute and a half, but is that a lot?
That doesn't cause me a lot of heartburn. I think we can. I think we can probably accept the change in headways from 6 minutes to 7.5 minutes. I think that's probably going to be manageable. In Charlotte, it's 10 minutes.
And it sounds like what you're concerned about is the structural things that might be expensive to change or upgrade later on.
That's
The way-
correct.
If you go on the Red Line now, the platforms are absolutely crammed. People can barely get on.
Well, that's correct. Metro needs to move to longer trains. I mean, I think we should anticipate that this project will be popular, that people will like it, that it's going to be successful. And the evidence of communities around the United States is that. And so we should plan for high ridership, and that we should build right the first time.
The demolition has begun on White Flint Mall, a landmark. Your reaction to that and what the future holds for that area?
The entire Pike District is a tremendous investment opportunity. It's one of the most exciting parts of Montgomery County already, and it's just going to get more and more desirable. There's going to be new places to go out and have fun, and the nightclub is opened at Pike and Rose, and there's excellent live music now available for people to enjoy. And I know that the learners have plans for the former White Flint Mall that are consistent with the other developments that have already happened in the Pike District. So I think it's something we can all look forward to.
Do you think there would be any effort by the county to help communities that are going to be affected by the construction of the Purple Line, such as the town of Chevy Chase, to mitigate its impact on those communities during both?
The impact of the Purple Line on the town of Chevy Chase is going to be hugely positive. Chevy Chase residents are going to use it, they're going to ride it, they're going to be able to get back and forth to and from the University of Maryland, they're going to be able to connect with the other line of the Red Line, and this visit to Charlotte is very much on my mind, because communities there that hadn't seen it and didn't understand the benefits of it were skeptical and expressed criticism, and now that it's up and running, it's overwhelmingly popular. So, and there's a hiker-biker trail that's very attractive and safe and heavily used. So every community is going to benefit from the Purple Line. The benefits are going to be enormous. But it's hard to understand if you haven't seen it. I feel like I've seen the future, and it's a success. But if you've never ridden one, if you haven't visited Charlotte or Portland or seen one of these things, I understand that change is scary, the unknown is scary.
One of the larger cuts that we proposed in this plan is for stump removal. Can you talk about the money you put back into that and why?
Well, I don't want to prejudge the decisions that the T&E committee will make. What has happened is Pepco has cut down a lot of trees, and Pepco's been unwilling to remove the stumps. That Pepco said that has historically been a county responsibility. Stumps are ugly, and they make it difficult to replant trees. We want to have adequate tree cover, and you can't plant another tree if there's already a stump there. We're not talking about homeowners removing the trees themselves. Homeowners feel they're unfairly treated when a utility removes the tree and doesn't remove the stump. So, that's not a life or death issue, but it's historically something that we it's a quality of life issue for neighborhoods. I don't know I can't speak to what judgment we'll make on the savings plan there, but it's another example of where the council is given, under the charter, the authority to appropriate funds, and adding council priorities to the executive's budget proposal is something the council has done every year. We added approximately $18 million above the county executive's recommendations in fiscal 16. In fiscal 2000, which was the last year that Mr. Leggett was council president, the county council added in the neighborhood of $17 million. So it's not new or unusual that the council would exercise the authority given to us under the charter. And so whether it's stump removal or whether it's housing homeless veterans, these are things that are priorities for council members that the people of Montgomery County have empowered us to make these decisions.
Do you have concerns about some of the cuts described in the county executive's memo talk about you're gonna have to go longer between cleanings at public facilities, libraries perhaps. There's gonna be less mowing, et cetera. Right now in the county, I've noticed several areas where it kind of surprised me, the growth on medians, and just the look of it. Is that a concern, and how much does that matter in the face of all that you all have to deal with?
I think there will be recommendations that Mr. Leggett has made. There probably are some things that the council added in the reconciliation list that, upon reflection and given the win case and given that revenue estimates have not been met, that income tax revenues are below what we hoped in the last two distributions, that we will go along with. And I don't want to pick and choose now because I'm not dictating to committees. Committees are very independent and they make their own recommendations. So, on the issue of cleaning and maintenance of facilities, on the issues of stump removal, these are not life or death decisions, but they're important quality of life decisions, and I don't want to prejudge at this moment where we'll end up at the end of July.
And I ask because do you get taxpayers who are going, look, I pay high taxes and this area looks terrible, or there's no toilet paper in my library bathroom? I mean, do you get that kind of?
Sure, we hear that. I hope that constituents appreciate that we get a very high level of service in Montgomery County, that we have a pretty high rate of libraries per capita to serve the community, that we expect good government and good management, and we're going to continue to deliver it. But sure, we get complaints if someone finds that they're in the library and a restroom is closed because it's being cleaned, of course. I mean, generally constituents tend to contact elected officials when they have a complaint. It's pretty rare that someone is moved to send an email just because life is good and the library's nice. That doesn't happen a lot. So sure, we hear all range of complaints. But by and large, we hear from constituents with complaints. That tends to characterize why they contact us.
By the way, I live in Silver Spring. The library is nice.
Isn't it nice? It's got to be one of the best libraries in America. It's so nice.
My kids love it.
Absolutely fantastic.
As you were.
Yeah.
Roughly how many high-level positions are you proposing to look at in this study?
We're going to work with OLO to determine an appropriate universe. We're talking about the folks at the very highest end of the compensation range.
What is that, like 100 to
It's
200?
many hundreds.
Many.
Many hundreds of positions.
Can we get like a more than 300 or more?
I'm not in the position to give you that at this moment. I mean, if you're looking for examples, we just hired 2 department heads at $200,000, and I'm pretty confident OLO is going to examine it, that those positions are being filled in other communities at less than $200,000, and we're going to find, as OLO studies, where we stand in relationship to other governments in the region and other similar governments around the country, that we're an outlier and that we can get a very high level of excellent service at a more reasonable range of compensation.
Mind sharing 2 departments?
It's the Director of Corrections and the Fire Chief. Both outstanding individuals. I think Mr. Leggett made a smart decision to retain both gentlemen, and I was happy to vote for them. And the council historically doesn't set compensation. But if we're going to take a long-term view, and if we're looking at a major budget gap in 17, then I think for new hires, the county council ought to have a role, and we ought to be more circumspect about offering salaries that are out of range. I'm not proposing that anyone's salary be reduced. I'm not proposing that anyone earning a salary today should earn less than he or she is earning today. But when it comes to filling new positions, if the budget forecast is as dire as the executive branch is suggesting, then I don't think we can afford to be as generous as we have been.
Do you feel that any of the positions you're talking about are unnecessary? Just the
Oh no, we
positions
need a
themselves?
Director of Corrections, we
No,
need a
but
Fire
not
Chief.
those, not those 2, but you said many hundreds of people earning these very high salaries.
We need to look at right sizing overall. And I'm particularly interested in the highest salaries because it costs the taxpayers the most.
I see the $1 million that was supposed to go into the public election fund this budget cycle is proposed for elimination. Does that concern you?
Very much. Is that correct?
No.
No, Mr. Leggett didn't propose to eliminate that. Yeah, no, that was just an item on the reconciliation list. Yeah, Mr. Leggett did not propose to cut that.
It says public election fund, $1 million.
Those are examples of items that the council added beyond Mr. Leggett's recommendations, but that was not one of the items that Mr. Leggett proposed to cut. I strongly support the public election fund. We're committed by law to fund it, and we need to get it to a place where in 2018 we can use it. and be a model for the United States in terms of how to take special interest money out of our electoral process at the local level. Very good. Okay. Thanks very much. I'm available if there's further questions at another time. You can reach me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.